I'm John Little, and this is the Weekend SHOCKCAST for the last weekend of February 2014. This week, I wrote 3 articles on geoengineering and 1 article on the Ukraine, or, as my Ukrainian friends pronounce it, Ukraina. So let's get to the articles. On Tuesday, it was Killing Earth with Geoengineering Part 3, UV Radiation. If you wanted to sterilize planet Earth, all you would need to do is completely eliminate the ozone layer that protects us from the worst of the UV radiation, or ultraviolet light, that comes from our sun. Without that ozone layer, there would be no life on Earth. Which is why we are destroying it. Or maybe I should say that it's your tax dollars being used by the U.S. government and others to destroy it in the name of combating global warming. On Wednesday, I wrote Killing Earth with Geoengineering Part 4, Playing with Chaos. We have moved beyond the use of chaos theory to predict. We are now using chaos theory to manipulate the weather and even destroy using the weather. And if they were just trying to solve global warming, why all the secrecy? On Thursday, we talked about Killing Earth with Geoengineering Part 5, Apocalypse. I read through Revelation chapter 6 at least once a year, and every time I read it, I'm struck by a characteristic of the horsemen that is different from the trumpets and the vials. The 7 trumpets are sounded by 7 angels, and the 7 vials are poured out by 7 angels. But what about the 4 horsemen? So why am I sticking the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse into a discussion of geoengineering? You'll have to wait to find out. On Friday, I wrote Rosh On Fire. The U.S. and Russia are at war. The fact that there are no aircraft carriers or helicopter gunships involved should not fool you. What is happening in Kiev is war, and Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, knows it. Why is this important to us? Keep listening and you'll find out. Killing Earth with Geoengineering Part 3, UV Radiation, for Tuesday, February 18th, 2014. I had something of an impromptu day off yesterday when the internet connection to a large part of Taipei went down for what seemed like most of the day. It was so good to have a few hours where I was completely cut off from the rest of the English-speaking world, which is why you didn't get your daily dose of doom yesterday. Now where were we? I remember when they banned the use of CFCs or chlorofluorocarbons from spray cans, air conditioners, and refrigerators. The hysteria was acute. Everyone was desperate to stop using them. It was a huge hot button. We just had to protect the ozone layer because the high priests of environmentalism said so. Which is why those same high priests of environmentalism are dumping tons and tons of ozone-destroying chemicals directly into the stratosphere, where the ozone layer is. Isn't that just so logical? UV radiation. A little bit of ultraviolet light is good for you. A few minutes every day on your skin generates quite a bit of vitamin D. Plants find some use for it in photosynthesis. It's great for committing germicide, i.e. killing nasty microbes. You need it if you are ghastly pale like me, and if you wanted to kill off all life on planet Earth, well, it's perfect. If you wanted to sterilize planet Earth, all you would need to do is completely eliminate the ozone layer that protects us from the worst of the UV radiation, or ultraviolet light, that comes from our sun. Without that ozone layer, there would be no life on Earth, which is why they're destroying it. Or maybe I should say that it's your tax dollars being used by the U.S. government and others to destroy it in the name of combating global warming. Do you remember the phrase, "It became necessary to destroy the town to save it"? Well, I think that the globalists are doing that here, or maybe they're doing it to save the Earth for themselves. So whatever their motivation, they're doing it. Let's get to the evidence. Heard of the ozone hole over the North Pole? No? Well, I've got a picture of it in my article. It's from 2011. Want to guess how big it is now? The most harmful UV radiation is UVB and C. Once upon a time, the amount of UVB hitting us was about 5% of the total amount of ultraviolet radiation that we were receiving. And we were getting 0% UVC. That's changed. Want to guess how much is hitting us now? Try 70%. And yes, we are starting to detect UVC. Do you know what that UV radiation is doing to life in the ocean? Well, it's killing the phytoplankton, which are one of the building blocks of life in the ocean. When the phytoplankton die, the ocean dies. Do you want to know what happens to us when the ocean dies? Well, it looks like we're going to find out, and I really don't want to. I almost forgot about what happens to plant life on land under high UV. This shouldn't be hard to figure out, but heavy ultraviolet light makes survival difficult for many of the plants that we need. Vegetables and grains are quite finicky about their growing conditions. Oh, and there's a fun bit of irony. Ultraviolet light is very energetic, very. When more of it hits the ground, more heat is generated. What do we call that? Warming. What happens when it does this globally? Global warming. So all that chemtrail spraying is probably increasing global warming. Isn't this fun? Well, the fun doesn't end here. I strongly recommend that you read 2 articles that I've linked to from my website that are packed with more information and links to real source material. The first article, Don't Believe UV Radiation Levels Are Off the Charts, ? And Geoengineering is Destroying the Ozone Layer. And then I did a search on Geoengineering Watch for articles talking about UV, and I provide a link to that search. Take a look at the articles in that search result, but don't stop there. Last night I listened to a recording of Dane Wigington on the Vinnie Eastwood Show, recorded on January 13, 2014. I also provide a link to that interview in my article. It was billed as the most intense geoengineering interview ever. However, it's 3 hours long, and that's pretty long, but it was a good show. If you want to listen to it 1 hour at a time, you can also find the show broken down into 3 parts in 2 links that I provide on my article. In the final analysis, if you've been reading my articles, then you know that we're in trouble. This is nothing new to you, but maybe this geoengineering catastrophe adds a new dimension to your understanding of what's wrong. Hopefully, it will help motivate you to take action, like, move south. And equally hopefully, it will give you one more bit of information to help convince others that there is a problem. There are powerful interests behind the chemtrail program, and you can choose to fight them if you want. But my biggest concern is for your well-being. May I recommend a permanent vacation in the Southern Hemisphere? On Wednesday, February 19th, 2014, I wrote Killing Earth with Geoengineering Part 4, Playing with Chaos. There's a saying in Indiana where I grew up, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. It's a Midwest America thing, and I'm sure that quite a few states suffer from the same problem, unpredictable weather. And unpredictable weather can turn life upside down and even get you killed. That's why we use supercomputers to attempt to predict it. Some of the most powerful computers in the world are being used today to predict what the weather will be, and it has made forecasting easier and more accurate. But what if you could take uncertainty out of the picture and make the weather obey? What if you could manipulate the weather? But let's do some chaos first. Playing with chaos. I'm sure that you've heard of chaos theory. Some of you may even know that it has something to do with mathematics and Brazilian butterflies causing tornadoes in Texas, i.e. the butterfly effect. What you may not know is that chaos theory has nothing to do with chaos. In fact, practitioners of chaos theory don't believe in chaos, but they do believe in systems that are so complex, having so many moving parts that they appear to be chaotic. They know that if you analyze such systems carefully enough, you will discover how they work and then predict what happens as a result of certain events, along with stomping out all those tornado-causing butterflies. One such system is weather. With the weather, every molecule in the air is a moving part, which makes the whole thing one of the most complex systems in the world, and only chaos theory and a supercomputer can predict what the weather will do. And they've been doing a pretty good job, certainly better than they were doing in the 70s and 80s. But there's a problem, and you knew that I was going to get to it because every one of my articles is about problems. The problem is that we have moved beyond the use of chaos theory to predict. We are now using chaos theory to manipulate the weather and even destroy using the weather. Remember my reference to the butterfly effect? Well, it makes an important point about chaos theory. It's saying that a small change in a highly ordered system, like the weather, would have huge effects over a long enough period of time, which is why some guy named Lorenz could theorize about Brazilian butterflies causing tornadoes in Texas or hurricanes in the Atlantic. Well, if weather and climate are highly or ultra-highly ordered systems, then what we do in North America will have impact on the rest of the world, sort of like the picture I included in my article. If nothing unusual going on, that map would be white, but it's not. It's all oranges and reds, except 2 areas, Antarctica and North America. Interesting, don't you think? Yeah, and it's so interesting that you need to sit up and pay attention. Everyone has heard the classic question, what's wrong with this picture? Well, what's wrong with the picture are the temperature anomalies, especially the red ones. The next question should be, what is causing all those red anomalies? If I were to apply Occam's razor, the most obvious and direct explanation is true, the prime culprit would be those blue areas. Is it a coincidence that this is where most of the chemtrail spraying is happening? Yeah, well, I'm not into coincidence theory either, so like you, I also do not believe that there's no connection to those blue areas. Yes, I know that the weather and climate are highly complex systems, and that there could be a number of factors contributing to all this. But surely we aren't so stupid that we can't see the continent-sized problem that is hovering over the North America. Right? Right, you aren't stupid and I'm not either. You can see the big blue North American problem as easy as I can. So, is this intentional? It's a little hard to say, but Dane Wigington seems to think that chemtrails and HAARP are globalist Illuminati programs. The fact that they've been keeping them very, very secret lends credence to Mr. Wigington's argument. Even if Dane is wrong about the Illuminati connection, although I think that he's right, the secrecy surrounding the program is very, very troubling. If they were just trying to solve global warming, why all the secrecy? Of course, if it is an Illuminati program, which seems likely, well, I suspect that there's something really awful going on. Remember that Fabian window that I talked about in my article, Tipping Points? Take another look at it in my article. Could the Illuminati be using geoengineering to remold the Earth nearer to their heart's desire? With all the other awful things that they are doing, you would need to work hard to convince me otherwise. But whatever the case, some very evil or supremely stupid people are playing with chaos by fiddling with the weather. It seems to me that now would be a great time to start that extended vacation in the Southern Hemisphere. Are you ready for this? On Thursday, February 20th, 2014, I wrote Killing Earth with Geoengineering, Part 5, Apocalypse. There's a lot more to say on the subject of geoengineering. I haven't said much of anything about HAARP, and you can see HAARP's footprints all over the severe weather conditions in the eastern half of the United States. Please remember that HAARP has demonstrated an ability to maneuver the jet stream by bringing Arctic air deep into the U.S. We also haven't talked about what kinds of chemicals they are spraying up in the stratosphere and the effects that those chemicals are having on us. We know that nanoparticles of aluminum are in the mix. We know that ozone-destroying sulfates are being sprayed directly into the ozone layer. We've even detected barium in the snow that is falling in the U.S. God knows what else is being sprayed up there. And he does know. I read through Revelation chapter 6 at least once a year, and every time I read it, I'm struck by a characteristic of the horsemen that is different from the trumpets and the vials. The 7 trumpets are sounded by 7 angels, and the 7 vials are poured out by 7 angels. But what about the 4 horsemen? Here's the first horseman. Quote, And I saw, when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow. And a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Revelation 6, 1-2. Who's at work here? Either a person or a government. Here's the second horseman. Quote, And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. Revelation 6, verses 3 and 4. Who's at work here? Angels? No, people and governments. Here's the third horseman. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Revelation 6, verses 5 and 6. This is famine, or at least scarcity. And there's a question about cause. Normally you'd want to talk about nature being the cause, but is that the cause here? More people have starved to death from man-made famines than the natural kind. The famine that launched the French Revolution was artificial. The famine that killed millions in the Ukraine under Stalin was artificial. The famine during the Great Leap Forward in Mao's China was artificial. There are a host of possible causes for the famine linked to this third horseman. It could be financial catastrophe. It could be the result of wars brought by the previous 2 horsemen. It could be the massive amount of weather modification that the U.S. and other governments have been engaged in. And all these possibilities are man-made. But it gets worse. Here's the 4th horseman. Quote, And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Revelation 6, verses 7 and 8. Did you notice how each horseman is worse than the one going before it? Could it be that each successive horseman builds on the results of the previous horseman? Yeah, it really could be. But this 4th horseman has a name, Death. Does this mean that these are not human-engineered events? Well, let me ask you if these are literally horsemen that go out to ride the world. Are these horsemen allegorical figures? I'll leave it for you to decide. Just remember that there appear to be no angels involved in the activities of these horsemen. So why am I sticking the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse into a discussion of geoengineering? Well, there's a video that launched this series of articles, and you can find the video in my article. Listen carefully, and you can hear the hoofbeats of the four horsemen riding through this video. Can you think of a better way than weather-induced starvation to rid the world of excess population? You could try epidemic disease, but that method could turn and bite the hand that launches it. You could try using war, poison gas, and death camps, but that would leave no doubt as to who was causing all of it, and war crimes trials are just so tedious. But if you controlled the weather, well now, that has fascinating possibilities. You could kill as many people as you like and no one would know that you were the one doing it. You could lay waste to whole continents by turning off the rain, only to have them spring back to life after all the human inhabitants had been killed off. If I was a psychopathic worshiper of Satan, death, and hell, I would jump at the idea, and I believe that the Illuminati globalists have indeed jumped at this idea. Please remember that the Illuminati has been energetically seeking a way to eliminate 95% of the human race, and they have been applying their considerable wealth and intellect to this question. They want the world to themselves with a small enslaved remnant of humankind to do their bidding, and they will undoubtedly use each and every option at their disposal to achieve these ends. But I cannot think of a more elegant way to commit genocide than using the weather. It is Illuminati money pushing these geoengineering efforts forward, and it is Illuminati power that has enshrouded these efforts in a fantastic cloak of secrecy. Can you think of anything that is so obvious yet so secret? Can you think of a good reason why they are keeping all of this so secret? No, but I can think of plenty of bad ones, and global genocide is right at the top of the list, and it is startling to see how closely their efforts conform to the first 8 verses of Revelation 6. The next question is whether you are prepared for this. Can you hear the hoofbeats of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? I can, and I suspect that they've already begun their ride. Are you ready for this? On Friday, February 21st, 2014, I wrote Rosh On Fire. The U.S. and Russia are at war. The fact that there are no aircraft carriers or helicopter gunships involved should not fool you. What is happening in Kiev is war, and Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, knows it. Putin's problem right now is that his hands have been tied by the Winter Olympics in Sochi. But the last day of the Olympics is in 2 days, on the 23rd. When you wake up on the morning of the 24th, will you see Russian troops in the Ukraine? Maybe yes, maybe no, but that is a very good question indeed. But let's ask a more important question first. Why is this important to us? Well, as I wrote last month, the Ukraine is mentioned in the Bible as a part of the army of Gog and Magog. In Hebrew, the Ukraine is referred to as Rosh, in Ukrainian, Rus. Wikipedia has an interesting article that talks about the Rus name and indicates that the earliest written documents refer to the Ukrainians as Ros. Curiouser and curiouser. So why isn't the Ukraine called Rus? Well, until the 19th century they were called Rus, but they lost their ideological battle with their stronger neighbor to the north, and well, I strongly suspect that being called Ukraina is preferable to being tortured to death, but that's just me. There's an interesting article on the subject from Ukrainian Week, quote, "Where did Ukraine come from?" unquote. For more history on Kiev and Rus, Wikipedia has an interesting article. And if that's not enough history for you, there's this, the Rus people, also on Wikipedia. To lighten up the discussion a little and give you more historical background, John Green and Crash Course has a video, Russia, the Kievan Rus, and the Mongols, Crash Course World History number 20. Okay, I can see that you've had enough, so let's pull this back to the question of why this is important to us. Remember that Gog and Magog cannot happen without Rosh, and the U.S. and Europe would like to pull Rosh away from Gog and Magog, although they do not see this with the biblical perspective. This is a bloody struggle that has been going on for more than 10 years, and the result will be a harsher, more militarized Russia and Ukraine. The U.S. and Europe are going to lose this struggle, and the results will be catastrophic and will be another incentive for Russia's move southwards. Again, why is this important to us? You mean besides the importance of the Bible and biblical prophecy? This puts you in danger. Remember this verse in Ezekiel, quote, "And I will send a fire on Magog and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am the Lord." Ezekiel 39, verse 6. That sounds like a coronal mass ejection, or CME, from a Z-class solar flare. If you've been reading my articles, you've heard me talk about an EMP attack. You do not want to be caught in such a situation. The question is this: Who are them that dwell carelessly in the isles? I believe this to be North America and Europe. It would take a very long CME for this to happen, because the Earth would need to rotate so that Russia, Europe, and then North America would be facing the sun. However, we know that solar storms can last 5 hours, and that is more than enough time. Do you want to be caught in such an event? I don't, which is one of the reasons why I recommend sitting on the other side of the planet in East Asia or Southeast Asia when Ezekiel 39 begins to be fulfilled. I am not in Taiwan for this reason, but this issue is certainly another argument for me to stay. We'll see how the Lord directs my wife and I. The other place to go is the Southern Hemisphere. There are quite a few reasons to go there already, so think of this as another one. The worst of the radiation from Fukushima is being contained in the Northern Hemisphere. The worst of the current effects of geoengineering is contained in the Northern Hemisphere. The worst of the current insanity plaguing the world seems to be focused there. So think about it. Avoid the fire that is going to come down on them that dwell carelessly in the isles by going to the Southern Hemisphere. It's warm down there. Are you ready for this? This has been the Weekend Shockcast for the last weekend of February 2014. I'm John Little of OmegaShock.com.